When it comes to advocating for the Second Amendment publicly, the one thing everyone in the gun world agrees is that it requires a spine. Having a spine is not compromising your beliefs in the face of uncertainty and possible unpopularity, but sometimes you'll see prominent figures, firearm manufacturers, or corporations relating to the gun industry drop the tough guy act when just a little bit of heat comes from quote-unquote grassroots gun control groups. There's a lot of examples of compromising, backing down, or backstabbing the Second Amendment that range in severity, so wouldn't it be nice for us to go over some notable and overlooked history of the gun industry just throwing in the towel for gun rights? Well, look no further. Wubba Bubba's got you covered, and let's just dive into some certified French moments from the firearm industry. When I started talking about wanting to do a video about the gun industry backstabbing the Second Amendment, one name kept being brought up in my research: Ruger. Yes, the namesake and one of the men behind the current biggest arms manufacturer in the world. William B. Ruger was by all accounts a genius when it came to the designs of firearms and running a successful company he co-founded. On the surface level, he seemed like a man that truly cared about the right to keep and bear arms, but as soon as I saw the controversy tab on his Wikipedia page, I knew I was in for a rotten treat. He wrote to every congressman on March 30th, 1989 about the most effective way to curtail gun violence relating to assault rifles. It's a pretty long letter, so I'll skip to the main course. The best way to address the firepower concern is therefore not try to outlaw or license many millions of older, imperfectly legitimate firearms, which would be a licensing effort of staggering proportions, but to prohibit the possession of high-capacity magazines. By a simple, complete, and unequivocal ban on large-capacity magazines, all the difficulty of defining assault rifle and semi-automatic rifles is eliminated. The large-capacity magazine itself, separate or attached to the firearm, becomes the prohibited item. A single amendment to the federal firearms law could effectively implement these objectives. William B. Ruger. I will just say it, this doesn't look that good. Now, I have heard some nuanced takes from this, like this was a last-minute compromise to ensure a lot of gun and gun accessories don't get a blanket ban in the near future, because this happened in 1989, and most of the gun industry saw the assault weapons ban coming a mile away. Still, in my opinion, this paper is nothing more than a compromise on the Second Amendment, and it's just dumb to wave the flag of defeat, even if your situation looks bleak. He doubled down in 1992 on the magazine ban, so he got what he wanted, because in 1994, a federal magazine ban of over 10 rounds was enacted, nicely wrapped up with the 1994 assault weapons ban. Great job, Will. Proved everyone's point that compromising some gun rights will never be enough for tyrants. He continued to head Ruger until his death in 2001, and this one controversy has forever tainted his legacy as one of the most influential people in the gun world. One of the first things you learn when you deep dive in the gun ownership world, the NRA is a pretty shitty lobbying group. Despite the media depicting them as putting guns over gun control legislation, there are several notable times they have done quite the opposite. So what I'm going to do is a speedrun of multiple controversies, which you can get a grasp of why a growing chunk of gun owners don't like them. The NRA in 1967 supported the Mulford Act in California that banned open carry of loaded guns in public, which was done as a response towards the Black Panther Party patrolling neighborhoods with firearms. No matter your views on the Black Panther Party, banning open carry for everyone is stupid. Side note, Ronald Reagan signed and supported the bill. Not that shocking if you digged a little bit into some of his statements on gun laws. I also realized that NRA wasn't really a Second Amendment lobbying group at the time, but history is history and this story is brought up a lot. From 1985 to 1986, the NRA endorsed the Firearm Owners Protection Act, which did include some pro-gun measures but didn't push back on the Hughes Amendment to the bill, which made it illegal for everyday citizens to own machine guns produced after May 19, 1986. During Trump's first presidency, they okayed the bump stock ban through the ATF redefining a machine gun and openly pushed for risk protection orders, aka red flag laws. To this day, they refuse to show up for legal fights to further Second Amendment rights, but somehow they always show up after a win. But the most important reason why people don't support the NRA. The money donated to the NRA goes to absolutely nothing and goes straight into the pockets of the former CEO of the time, Wayne LaPierre. There's reports of him spending thousands of dollars on suits, private jet flights, etc. He luckily stepped down from his cushy position at the beginning of 2024, right before he had to face a multitude of lawsuits from his corruption. But my question is, does it really matter who replaces him? Even if I was being generous and brushed aside a lot of decisions they made 30 years ago, they still have a launchy list of backing down or backstabbing that could make the video go on forever. It's not even worth supporting them in any capacity. Just stick with almost any other gun rights group and never look back. This one probably hurts the most because currently, Smith & Wesson is an incredible gun manufacturer. My first guns that I've owned were from them, so it's pretty disappointing that they teamed up with Bill Clinton in 2000 with just some of the most downright evil executive orders and agreements you can muster up. I have an archive right here of this crossover no one asked for, and it's just depressing how much they caved in, so let's just jump into it. Today, President Clinton will highlight an historic agreement with Smith & Wesson to build on his comprehensive efforts to reduce gun violence in America. Today, Smith & Wesson, one of the nation's largest gun manufacturers, joined the federal government in cities and states across the country in a landmark agreement that will keep guns out of the wrong hands and result in safer guns. Some of the key provisions of the agreement include new design standards to make guns safer and prevent accidental shootings and gun deaths. Locking devices. Safety locking devices will be required for handguns and pistols, external locking devices within 60 days, and internal locking devices within 24 months. Smart guns. 2% of annual firearms revenues will be dedicated to the development of authorized user technology that can limit gun use to its proper owner. Authorized user technology will be included in all new firearm models within 36 months. Large capacity magazines. New firearms will not be able to accept ammunition magazines with a capacity of over 10 rounds. The manufacture of such magazines have been prohibited since 1994. Safety testing and standards. All firearms are to be tested by ATF to ensure that they meet performance and safety standards such as drop test. Oh, don't tell SIG that. Other safety devices. Within 1 year, all pistols will have chamber load indicators to show that a pistol is loaded to prevent accidents, and magazine disconnectors will be available to customers within 12 months. New sales and distribution controls to help keep guns out of the hands of criminals and help law enforcement crack down on illegal gun traffickers. Cutting off dealers with disproportionate crime guns. Under the agreement, manufacturers will take action against dealers or distributors who sell disproportionate numbers of guns that turn up in crimes within 3 years of sale, including termination or suspension against the dealer or distributor. Gun shows. Authorized dealers cannot sell at gun shows unless every seller at the gun show conducts background checks. Ballistics testing. To help law enforcement trace guns used in crimes when only bullet or casing is recovered, ballistic fingerprints will be provided for all new firearms to ATF, FBI National Integrated Ballistics Identification Network within 6 months if technologically feasible. Safety training for purchasers. No sales will be made to dealers who do not require gun purchasers to demonstrate that they can safely handle and store firearms. Theft prevention. No sales will be made to dealers who do not implement a security plan to prevent gun theft. Weapons attractive to criminals. Authorized dealers and distributors will not sell large capacity ammunition magazines or semi-automatic assault weapons. Restrictions on multiple handgun sales. To deter illegal gun trafficking, dealers must agree to new limits on multiple handgun sales. All purchasers of multiple handguns can only take one handgun from the day of sale, the remainder 14 days later. Enforcement of agreement. An oversight commission will be established to oversee the implementation of this agreement. The commission will have 5 members selected as follows: 1 by manufacturers, 2 by city and county parties, 1 by state parties, 1 by ATF. ATF will work with manufacturers and the Oversight Commission to assist them in meeting obligations under this agreement. This whole agreement shows, especially at the end, that Smith & Wesson wasn't looking out for anyone but themselves. They hoped others would copy so they wouldn't look like the only cowards. The problem is that most manufacturers didn't follow suit, and Smith & Wesson was rightfully dunked on by everyone and lost a significant amount of their sales, and even their stock tanked. Luckily, in 2001, they were then bought out by a company called SAFT Hammer, and the new ownership did a complete 180 and turned the ship around. However, I still see people refuse to buy from Smith & Wesson, and honestly, after covering this whole fiasco, who can really blame them? The Illinois Firearms Manufacturers Association was a lobbying group that was funded by Illinois-based gun manufacturers, mostly from Springfield Armory and Rock River Arms. The IFMA main goal was to oppose gun control bills that are pumped out on a regular basis in the blue state, so in comes Senate Bill SB 1657 in early 2017 that requires state licensing for Illinois FFLs on top of federal level licensing. The bill passed the Illinois Senate, no thanks to IFMA, because they conjured up a deal with anti-gun legislators that in exchange for not opposing it, they would exempt big box gun stores and firearm manufacturers in the state. So let me repeat this. The IFMA, which is primarily funded by two large gun companies, Springfield and Rock River Arms, retracted their opposition to a gun bill, and in turn, larger gun companies based in Illinois are exempt. Once the controversy train started chugging, Springfield and Rock River Arms tried to deny having anything to do with this compromise that benefits them. But there's also another thing that really doesn't help their case, that they're totally innocent. Jay Keller, the IFMA guy who brokered the final deal, was reportedly good friends with the CEO of Springfield Armory, Dennis Reese. Both companies decided to part ways with Illinois Firearms Manufacturer Association, which forced the lobbying group to shut down due to them being primarily funded and even founded by the two companies. SB 1657 was ultimately vetoed by the governor at the time, Bruce Rauner, despite passing the Senate and House, but for something that got so close to passing, someone is to blame, and a good chunk of gun owners online put that on Springfield and Rock River Arms. The next controversy we have is piping hot from the oven, so let's just get into Silencer Central seemingly blocking bills that deregulate suppressors. The story starts with the early days of the Big Beautiful Bill, a reconciliation bill relating to tax and spending policies. If you watch the news, you probably heard it talked about endlessly, and I'm not going to really get into anything else about the bill besides the Big Beautiful Bill contained for a limited time would remove short-barreled rifles, any other weapons, short-barreled shotguns, and suppressors off the NFA registry and not requiring a tax stamp, aka gutting the NFA. Most in the gun world were cautiously excited, as if it arrived at the floor of the Senate, you don't have to deal with the filibuster and would pass with a simple majority. So you'd think this would be a win for everyone in the gun world, right? You see, several items on the NFA at their core aren't expensive for some hillbilly in his gun shop to produce and sell, which will create more competition in a previously restricted market. So it's no surprise to see a massive company like Silencer Central accidentally revealing their true colors of prioritizing profits over the Second Amendment. So for starters, they were quiet to making sure these NFA cuts were in the final bill, unlike other suppressor manufacturers like Silencer Co. Secondly, you had a lot of Washington insiders contacting influencers in the firearms space that they were getting pushback by Silencer Central for repealing the registry part of the NFA. Once these rumors became public knowledge, they released a full response that screamed a lawyer drafted it up, and it was extremely vague of what part of the NFA guts they supported. But lastly, and most importantly, Silencer Central's main lobbying group they donated to actively supports the tax stamp on suppressors staying. In my opinion, all of this evidence shows at minimum they were hands off with trying to get this once in a generation bill passed, and at worst, they were entirely against it for profit reasons. The damage to their brand was done, and you still see people actively boycott and call out Silencer Central on social media almost daily. Sadly, they most likely got what they wanted, as only repealing the tax part of the NFA passed, but not the almost full repeal of the NFA registry. Gotta give a shout out to Republicans for snatching defeat in the jaws of victory. There are rumors we might see some other pro-gun legislation in the future without the hindrance of the filibuster, but we were right there, man. One of the most important purchases in being a gun owner, a safe provides several benefits like keeping your gats cozy, organized, and well secured from unauthorized access to your guns. A lot of companies to choose from, and one of the most popular choices for securing your guns was Liberty Safe. Probably noticed I used the word was, as most in the gun world don't even look in their direction anymore, and this is all due to one incident. So in the summer of 2023, the FBI and law enforcement served a search and arrest warrant to Nathan Hughes of Arkansas, relating to crimes committed on January 6 around the Washington, D.C. area. But the feds came into a small problem with their search. It's hard to open gun safes. So what did the feds do? Just sledgehammer the shit out of it until it popped open? Nope. They just ringed up Liberty Safe and asked for backdoor access to the safe and complied almost instantaneously, even though there wasn't any legal backing from the feds' demands. You might be asking, why is there backdoor access to gun safes? Well, according to them, it's if you somehow forget the passcode and then you just ring up Liberty Safe headquarters for them to tell you the master code. Yeah, still a little bit fishy to be quite honest. You could probably guess this didn't go over very well with a lot of gun owners. They made several posts in response to the rising amount of justified criticism, and those were also rightfully dunked on as terrible damage control. They did eventually make a full-on apology and announced you can now call them to remove backdoor access codes to your safe from their database, but most of it's too little too late and tarnished their brand's reputation forever. But wait, there's even more! The employees of the company exclusively donated to some of the worst anti-gun Democrats. If you want to learn a bit more about the fine details, I'm linking to a great video from Washington Gun Law that covers this. Thanks to him, I would have never learned this. When most people think of where to purchase guns, they either think about mom and pop gun shops, online retailers, and of course, the big guys. Big box retailers tend to have a wider variety of modern firearms, ammo, and magazines than some independent gun stores. Some are well accepted to be pro-gun like Cabela's, Bass Pro Shop, Shields, but then you have others that don't have a great track record or have entirely pulled out of the firearm part of business. So let's quickly go over a few of them, shall we? Walmart used to sell a lot more variety in their firearms section. Starting in the 90s, they slowly rolled back selling handguns, stopped selling AR-15 or other scary rifles in 2015, stopped selling ammunition for firearms they deemed scary looking in 2019, and more Walmarts have been just putting up signs asking people not to open carry. So currently, all that's left in the sporting goods department is just lever actions, shotguns, some 22 semi-auto rifles, and bolt action rifles. Academy is likely the one you've either never heard of or didn't think they've done anything notable against the Second Amendment, yet here they are. For those unaware, Academy is just like your average sporting goods store. However, they are pretty apolitical, and that's why they're a mainstay for people who don't skew towards the right aisle of politics, which makes it not that shocking because the higher ups at Academy have donated to anti-gun Democrats in the past and present. But that's just the least of their problems. The most shitty thing they've ever done is trying to play both sides of the gun control debate, showing they really don't care about gun ownership in the country. On June 13th, 2016, a nationwide memo was sent to all Academy stores relating to the tragic event that caught national attention at a gay nightclub in Orlando the day before. Until further notice, Academy is removing all modern sporting rifles from store display until further notice. Academy is also removing these firearms from all advertising that we can affect. Academy will still sell modern sporting rifles firearms at stores per the below guidelines. This documentation supersedes all previous policies and procedures concerning MSRs. So if you couldn't already tell what the gist of their goal was, it's to appear like they've joined hand in hand with people pushing for gun control by appearing to stop selling semi-auto rifles with scary attachments, but in reality they're just refusing to sell them openly as people reportedly could just order them online. In conclusion, they're at minimum just a bit slimy. They wanted the business of both the gun grabbers who likely don't even shop there and the gun owners who still do to this day. In my opinion, Academy should have just let the storm pass and not give any statements of an event that isn't even their fault. Last big box store I want to cover before moving on is Dick's Sporting Goods. In case you're living under a rock, Dick's Sporting Goods across the globe don't even sell guns anymore. This started right after the Parkland, Florida incident, First by ceasing to sell semi-auto rifles and standard capacity magazines, then stopped selling firearms altogether the following year. They have since been actively calling for more gun restrictions. So yeah, this is one of the few companies I personally boycott. But that's not really saying much since I haven't entered one in a decade because they're boring, and I'm not interested in overpriced basketball gear or golf. Okay, I got one more controversy for you guys before I wrap up this video, so let's just dive into it. Black Rifle Coffee Company, at its core, is just a simple coffee company marketed towards conservatives, first responders, veterans, and the Second Amendment community. In the late 2010s, they marketed to almost every single right-wing media of entertainment. From television shows to podcasts, you really couldn't escape them. They were mostly free of controversy from their consumers, but then came the 2020s and yeah, it's been nothing but a PR disaster. So let's just get into their most infamous controversy. Them backstabbing Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm not going to go in depth of the whole Kyle Rittenhouse story, as most of you already know what happened, but his story in its most basic sense was the right of self-defense put on trial. So what does this have to do with Black Rifle Coffee Company? Well, right after Kyle got bailed out of jail, he posed in a photo with a Black Rifle Coffee Company t-shirt and a discount code with a Blaze Media celebrity. What followed was several discussions with Blaze and Black Rifle Coffee Company, with the latter discouraging the correlation of their brand and Kyle Rittenhouse. But what's more important to our story is that their CEO and founder Evan Hafer did a video response to this whole debacle. I'll play the key highlights of this short response.
There's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of hearsay and speculation thrown out there. So I wanted to get the facts straight with you guys. Number one, did we sponsor Kyle Rittenhouse? The answer is no. The reason for that, the reason why I think it's important, is that we're not in the business of profiting from tragedy. We're not in the business of profiting from this event. We have zero interest in collecting $1 from any of this. It is ethically inappropriate for us to do so or even give the perception. We believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. We also believe that a person is innocent until proven guilty. We will not waver, we will not deter from our mission to hire and support the veteran community and uphold constitutional American values.
So after these statements and clarifications, what were most people's takeaway from this? Well, not good. First of all, that response was really corporate sounding, vague, and getting butt mad at people misrepresenting what they believe in. Secondly, it was very obvious early on that Kyle was innocent since video evidence at the time showed him defending himself without a doubt, hence him being able to raise $2 million to get bailed out. So why is a company that profits off the backs of a Second Amendment customers and has a fucking black rifle in their name not backing a guy who defended himself with a black rifle? Well, there seems to be two reasons. Well, number one, the CEO and the founder of Black Rifle Coffee Company most likely didn't like Kyle. People screenshotted his liked tweets from his personal Twitter, and the tweets he liked paint Kyle in a less positive light during the whole sponsorship fiasco. I can't verify these likes anymore since Twitter made likes private, but just from my point of view, they're not obvious fakes. So who knows? But most importantly, number two, and what I think is the main reason they distance themselves from Kyle, and is the most obvious reason.
Money!
They likely didn't want to be negatively covered by the mainstream media due to the mainstream media painting Kyle and his acquaintances as spawns of evil, which could hurt their bottom line. But if you weren't convinced enough it was about the money and not profiting off a tragedy, let me point to you what most in the gun world see as a nail in the coffin to their reputation. On July 14th, 2021, a New York Times article covering Black Rifle Coffee Company was published. And within this one article, they completely turned their backs on Kyle Rittenhouse and even their customer base that they courted for years. You can't let sections of your customers hijack your brand and say, "This is who you are," Best told me. It's like, no, we define that. The Kyle Rittenhouse episode may have cost the company thousands of customers, but Hafer believed it also allowed Black Rifle to draw a line in the sand. It's such a repugnant group of people, Hafer said. It's like the worst of American society, and I got to flush the toilet of some of those people that kind of hijacked portions of the brand. The racism really pisses me off, Hafer said. I hate racist, proud boyish people. Like, I'll pay them to leave my customer base. I would gladly chop all of those people off my customer database and pay them to get the F out. If you want my honest opinion out of this whole article, they thought he was going to lose. They thought the garbage of the media penetrated the jury's brain and they were going to convict him, and they wanted to be on the winning side, aka the profitable side. That's why they were shitting not just on Kyle, but their customers, deciding to correlate both to extremists and pivot more away from what they see as problematic ideologies, despite for years asking for their business. And what seals the deal to this theory for me is that Black Rifle Coffee Company was about to go public later that year, and lessening your ties to values and people that investors see as a liability for perceived controversy. It's no wonder that a lot of their former customer base see them as grifters who sold out their so-called core values the instant they thought the wind was blowing in a different direction. However, there's just a teensy tiny problem with the strategy they were unraveling. Kyle won. He did a clean sweep on every charge. Oh, how convenient. Now they go on an apology tour. Oh my god, the instant I saw the Kyle Rittenhouse evidence, I knew he was innocent. But later on, I needed a lawyer to explain to me how important this case was. Oh my god. We're so sorry. We didn't realize how much we messed up. Fuck off. Let's just say most had had enough of Black Rifle's flip-flopping bullshit, and the damage to their brand is for the most part unrepairable for the wider Second Amendment community. It's just a classic case of a company grifting right-wing customers and values. I wanted to make this video for a while, not because I want to point at people and tell you how you're a bad person if you bought from one of today's subject matters, or like someone I covered in this video. It's about covering history. It's up to all of us to stand up and call out anti-gun behavior from within the industry and the community, like so many already have in the past. Notice that a lot of the companies or individuals I covered were forced to respond or retract certain stances because everyday Joes put the Second Amendment over their love of a company's product. History will repeat itself, and it's up to us to make sure it becomes just a bad footnote in whomever's history and not a mainstay in the ever-growing firearms industry and community. And based on a lot of the stories I covered today, I think the wider gun community is up to the task. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, this is Wubba Bubba signing off again.